Okay, so we're going to get into it with Trish Dryden and Janita Wiersma. Welcome, you two. Thank you for being here. I'm going to give a little bio about the two of you, but feel free to correct or add or, refute anything I have to say about you. So Trish Dryden you have over 50 years of professional experience in a whole bunch of areas, which is crazy because you're 55 years old, so it doesn't really make any sense. But Trish, you have clinical massage therapy practice experience, you've been a researcher, a published author, you've been an administrator at a college, you've been a bunch of other things I probably don't even know about, and maybe can't talk about, I don't know. And you're a community builder and done a lot of nonprofit work and been on boards and things as well. Now retired, you are a dedicated and delighted grandmother, I know from watching you with your grandsons, and you spend a lot of your time caring for those young children as well as some elders in your family, right? But Trish has found a new outlet for her imagination in creative nonfiction writing, which is I think a reasonably new endeavor for you, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, great. So that's Trish, everybody, in a very small nutshell. Okay. And Janita Wiersma is a mother, of course, is a painter, a printmaker, and a farmer, invested in regenerative agriculture just up the road at Evermeadow Farm. If you eat meat or eggs, you should know about them because everything they sell is phenomenal. Janita splits her time between art studio management and, as the people in this room know, the very important and all-consuming work of homemaking, raising two daughters, and also a bunch of community building. So that's Janita and Trish, and I'm thrilled to have you both here today. Awesome. So I'm just going to start right off, and I want to know, in your own words, I guess, and I guess we'll start with Janita. In your own words, what would you say your artistic practice looks like now, today?
Well, I would say I've been thinking about it as distributed. So I did some formal art school. I did a undergrad and part of a master's, and I was really working on figuring out how to, that whole process is a distillation. You're trying to figure out what your practice is, what your work is, and it's kind of bounded. And, ideally you can distill it down to a great little short paragraph. And I spent a long time doing that. And then I've been thinking about this recently. I mean, since you asked about this we're talking about this podcast, that since I had kids, I would say that it felt like it was moving to a point, and I could point to it and say, this is my art practice. I'm a printmaker. I do this. This is what my work is about. And once kids came, it kind of went totally out into everything. Okay. So it was it became, so distributed, I would say, into all aspects of life. So I think about it kind of rhizomatically, it's gonna pop up everywhere in a way that I didn't have before. That's okay. What I would say.
Okay. Wow, that's okay, yeah. Trish,
well,
how about you?
I certainly understand what you're talking about, because I think that's true, that having a family, you either start distributing the creativity, and it comes at you from different directions, and you spread it out in different directions, and I think that's very, very insightful, Janita, very interesting. I would say, what was the question again, Shannon?
How would you talk about, or what would you say is your artistic practice nowadays?
Well, I'm very fond of a writer, passed away now, but Joan Didion, who said she writes because she wants to know what she's thinking. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lifetime in creative practices of various sorts. As a kid, I was a very creative kid and loved the interior world of my imagination. Loved to read, loved to write, loved to dance, loved to do things. And I find now, after a lifetime of having to produce things for money, for people, for whatever, I right now, and my practice is entirely about my own self-pleasure and my own interests and my own rediscovery of self. So it's just been a gift to find writing creative nonfiction. I sit down in front of a computer and I write about what interests me, whether it's a memory, whether it's something social or political, whether it's a family conversation that's taken place. And it nourishes me in a way that has just been a thrilling discovery.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking about that. I think that is to say what the practice looks like, and then you basically said how it feels, which is, I think that is another way. Yeah, that it isn't, it's hard to point specifically to what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, what feels like art making is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, okay, so this might be hard to answer, but what are some examples of things right now that feel like art making to you?
Yeah, and I realized I didn't get very specific in that last answer. I would say, printmaking is still a thing I do. I think about myself as a printmaker, primarily. So that still feels like art making. So does making costumes for, my kids for Halloween or for some little drama stuff they're part of. And I would say I also often feel like I'm making a space. So hanging up laundry sometimes feels like art making, because it's there, I guess, where things feel beautiful and where it feels like I'm invested in the project. I'm not always invested in doing the laundry, but sometimes I am.
Yeah.
And moments in the house, putting something in a spot feels like, I could say I'm making an assemblage, mm-hmm. or I could say I'm decorating my dresser, but I would say I'm starting to feel that is all part of this distributed practice.
Okay. I saw somebody had an exhibit, and I'm not going to remember her now because I wasn't thinking about this recently, but there was a woman who created an exhibit maybe a year or two ago about how homemaking and the crafts of the home, like quilting for the purpose of your own family having quilts and things like that, like about showcasing that art. And what you're saying made me think of that, and it also makes me curious how much either one of you thinks about or cares about if you have an audience, and like who your audience is, if that's something that matters to you, and whether that's maybe changed over your life as well.
Well, I think I went for the audience for most of my life.
Okay.
In performing and in one way or another. And the liberating thing about being the age I am is that I don't have to do that anymore in any way. I perform for myself. And the performance, though, is also in the pleasure of family coming into the home and feeling the things that you're talking about, which is that vase with those flowers, with that tablecloth, with all those Hamisha things are, in point of fact, art and the creation of art. And it helps the children who are in my life notice things. They see beauty then in things, or they will ask about those things. And I think it's the way in which I feel like I'm passing on that capacity to participate in art and to see art everywhere. But performance, I'm ambivalent.
Okay.
Yeah, out and out performance.
Right.
This feels safe and fine and comfortable, and it's not like I don't feel safe doing performance of sorts, but the fact that I don't have to anymore is very liberating. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I don't have an audience in mind either, which, is very liberating. Yeah. I think, coming out of school, an art school, and sort of wondering if this was going to become part of, I mean, it did actually become part of my professional life in a different way, but yeah, if I was thinking about an audience always at that time. And yeah, that has changed, partly because for a long time it felt like I was putting it aside, and I was working on this other stuff, like raising kids. And now that I'm thinking about all of that work differently, like integrating it all, yeah, the audience isn't there, but I do think about that. I think like the setting up of a space, you're doing it because you're responding to like, this color should be here, you're doing it for yourself, but you're also building a world that people are living in.
And I realize from what you were saying too, it's not that I don't keep an audience in mind still. I don't need an audience, I don't have to have an audience, but on the other hand, all the stories I've written are being recorded by my son right now to keep as a kind of family legacy piece. So of course there is an audience in mind, and all the stories I'm writing are meant to be said aloud. So of course it's a shared experience, and in fact, when I'm talking about that private space of creating in my own office and just it's me thinking about what's going on inside of me, ultimately it does matter that I bring that out and have a reaction to it, or engage in some kind of dialogue about that. So thank you for that, because I had sort of thought, yeah, no, I don't really have an audience. Oh yes, I do.
Well, and maybe as you were talking, maybe the difference is that it's like an audience that is like friendly, or that you already feel sort of love for. Like it's not the audience. The idea of an audience could be like it's a blank. Who could it be?
Yeah.
It's somebody who I'm going to try to impress. It's somebody who maybe is going to give me a show. And maybe the audience is actually, yeah, of course that matters. Even when I'm making Christmas cards, I'm thinking I'm going to give these to people, and I'm thinking about them, but I'm not. Yeah, you're not maybe asking for more from that audience.
And for me, there's no longer because I have the privilege and capacity, that I don't have to perform to make a living. And I certainly have created and done a lot of art that was directed towards the benefits I would accrue or the society would accrue from it. I think I'm still working in how I feel society and the people I love will benefit from this, but I don't have to work in the commercial world. And I think the notion that art has to be created, if you aren't being paid for it, is it art? Kind of is just so insane in the way in which we live. Is we're so lucky that we're able to create and do things that don't have to have a price tag with them. There is an inherent value in them. And I also am very touched and moved by artists who are making, and creators who are making things for commercial purposes. It's not that I'm not, it's just that I don't have to do that, which takes a layer away from it that for me gives me clarity and purpose.
Yeah, so if you, I'm sort of in a similar world where I sometimes do, try to sell what I'm doing, but by and large, like, I don't need to. That's not how I pay for my food or things like that, like my family does not depend on my art making us money. And I have gone back and forth thinking about like, well, art should be valued, so I should be charging for this. And then other times of thinking like, I don't care. I just want to share this, and I just want to put something out in the world that's mattering to me, and I don't really care if it makes any money, which is a lucky place to be, but it is the place I am. I wonder though how the lack of what we consider professionalism, by which I mean being paid for something or being hired to do a thing, does that impact at all the way you identify yourself? Like if I were to ask you how would you introduce yourself to somebody you're meeting for the first time? What do you think you would say? Or if you had an answer to the first half, say that, don't worry about it.
It's taken me the last 4 years of really working at this craft that I'm working at to actually ever say out loud to anybody, I'm a writer, right? It felt like, oh, no, this is my hobby,
Yeah.
right? As if that's somehow diminutive in some way of what I'm doing. And I've come to realize that my self-esteem needed a little, little cuddle there to realize that I am a writer and this is what I do. And I've always created things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just the next phase of it. Whether it is commercializable or not is irrelevant. It is part of who I am as a human being
Mm-hmm.
and how I interact with the world. And so.
What about you, Janita?
Yeah, I guess I would say I'm a printmaker.
You would, okay.
Yeah, and then I would probably qualify that a bunch of times.
Right, right. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I only started saying I'm a musician instead of I'm a music teacher not that long ago, a few years ago maybe, where I started finally being like, well, I am both of those things, but musician encompasses all of it. Music teacher, the way I was saying it felt a bit like a qualifier. Like, well, this is what people hire me to do. Mm-hmm. This is what people have decided I'm good enough at to be paid for. And this other thing is a thing I like to do. And I've stopped putting my own self in that box and been like, that's not a problem. This is what I love to do. That doesn't make it something I shouldn't be identifying as. Yeah. Do you think, kind of circling back to the homemaking pieces of it and how that relates to family, I'm wondering if for you with your kids and for you now with your grandkids, or back when it was your own kids, do you think that there was like a noticeable shift in how you, the direction you took with your art, or the point of what you were trying to do? Can you very directly link it to having kids, or do you think it sort of came less obviously, or that was a bad word. Obviously is not a great, go ahead.
Well, for sure, having children changed the way I look at everything in the world. And I think particularly a lot of my art focuses on the nature of those relationships in family life and the complexity and liveliness and fun of that. And so I think actually it drove the direction that I have taken in art. Even when I was working in a more commercial setting, of course, it was doing that. I came home, and motherhood and family making and being in a family totally influenced what I was doing. But I realized recently, looking back, because I'm working on a piece right now, looking at how I grew up that way. My mother and father were very newly middle class, and they spent every available extra cent taking us to dance, to opera, to theater, to buying, music for us to listen to, books. There were so many books in the house, and I realized this was the way that they were going to help us be fully human and human beings, and to help us to the next place in our lives that we were going to get to. And I'm so fortunate to have grown up with that. So many don't. But that I feel I do that as a mother and as a grandmother. Mm-hmm. But it came from my own family.
Okay. Janita, I know you grew up very artistic, because I knew you sort of as a teenager at least, so I know that some of that must resonate for you too, but...
Yes, and my great-grandfather was an artist. He was a commercial artist in Holland, and I have some of his drawings, and so I grew up seeing his work. I mean, he was a painter also. He did landscapes and things. I saw his work in my grandmother's house. My grandmother is an artist also. So I think, there was like a very rich visual world that I lived in as a kid. But to answer, I think you were asking, like, did it change, the change from...
Did having kids was it a distinct change in trajectory for you at that? Was it like very obvious sort of?
No,
Okay.
I wouldn't say it was. I was, I finished school. We came back here. I started working in other artist studios, printmakers, and I was printing work, and so it started to move already. And I think at that time I felt really like there's still a chance. I'm going to do something as an artist. This is what I'm doing right now to work, but I was showing my work still, and I did a couple residencies, and but slowly it happened slowly.
Okay.
And I think, in fact, having kids was a little bit of a relief. I think I was feeling like, boy, I'm sick of thinking about myself.
Yeah.
and I didn't realize how much I was not going to be able to think about myself after they came. So it's like wasn't a good balancing out. But I think that was, I moved into that wholeheartedly, and for a long time did feel very frustrated and not able to do the work. Mm-hmm. I was working in these studios, and I was working for people making art, and I would have all these ideas, and I'd be in the studio and I'd watch them and we'd talk about their work, and then I'd come home and I'd have all these ideas, and then it would go nowhere.
Yeah.
And it felt frustrating. But then they were babies. Right. And so as they got a little older and they started having their own life, that I started to work with them on things. Like, I didn't put them out, but they love making prints. They love doing the lino prints. And so those little things started coming back. And over time I felt less like nothing was happening.
Right.
And that's what I mean by this distributed. Like, I started seeing it in all different areas.
Right.
So it was gradual.
Right. So when I had kids, I had put myself in the be a music teacher lane before having kids, and because I had trained in opera, decided I didn't want to do that, but hadn't yet decided I was going to give myself permission to write my own songs. So I was teaching and doing choir, which I love, but having kids actually, and then being home with them and having no time in my own brain and all of those things for a while, I think for me, it was like it corked something up that I then had to eventually get out. Like there was so much pressure, feeling like there was nothing that was mine, that I started writing songs I wrote a little bit before that, but mostly it was after having kids. I actually started being more creative, but in, bits and pieces, the way you kind of can with kids around and as I got older, then I was like, okay, I can actually go out and start putting on shows and do some things here and there, because there's time, there's more time afforded. I was also thinking what you just said about doing the lino cuts with your kids. My daughter has started picking up the guitar and singing in the dining room, and I try so hard to just walk by and she's 14, so don't react, don't burst into tears, even though you really want to, because it's like, I'm so excited, and I'm like, don't show your excitement, just keep going, just don't react at all. So there's something really unbelievable, not just for artist mothers, I'm sure for any parent, when your kid is doing something, making something, doing something, showing a little bit of their inside out, and you're just like, I don't know, I get as much, it's like it brings me back to that joy that I had that I can remember being like, this was just so fun, and so much discovery, and so much learning how to play 3 chords on a guitar, and then that meant you could play your favorite Pearl Jam song, and I don't know, that's a new thing that I wouldn't have without having kids showing me it all again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So grandmothering, Trish, you have the distinct and unique role of before and after school time, right?
I do.
And you have told me a little bit about the ways you use creativity to fill that time, and I'd really love to hear particularly about the project that was inspired by this cranky box that you're all going to see in a bit. But Trish told me this, and it's too delightful not to share. Can you talk about that?
Well, I was so inspired seeing Megan's wonderful cranky to your beautiful voice the whole performance of that, and you're in for such a treat. That I went up afterwards and I congratulated you guys and then looked very carefully at that box, and I thought, I could make me one of those. And so, because when I was working and a mom, it was very difficult to carve out the time for that level of creativity and focus. And instead, now it's like, oh, just bring on the boxes and the paper rolls and the glue gun and the whole 9 yards. Love it. So Austin was over after school, and it was on the day that Artemis 2 was absolutely coming down out of the sky, and he was very excited about this and talking about it. He's 8 years old. And I said, do you want to make a cranky? He says, what's that? And I said, well, it's kind of a forerunner of film. So we looked at some on YouTube. I described what Megan's had looked like and how it had gone with your voice. And we cut out a hole in a box, and it's at the back there. And then we storyboarded 3 panels so that he got the idea of the movement. And he had Artemis coming up over the moon and coming down and splashing down. And he did the line drawing of it. And it was just so much fun as he totally understood the visual of this. And so that's the kind of play I get to do now.
Yeah.
And I know for sure, I mean, my husband Lee has said, we'd both give ourselves good solid B's as parents, but definitely A+ Nana, because nothing phases me about this stuff anymore, and I don't have to make his dinner. His mother and dad are making dinner. They come and get him. So I get to do all the playtime, all the mess, all the fun. I never got to do that before with them. This
Right.
is just way cool.
Right. Okay. You referred to like when I was mom and I was working and therefore didn't have the time for all this. I noticed a thread in the previous episodes that I have recorded. I've been recording conversations for this since about December. And a lot of us, I would venture to say the majority of the people I've interviewed, and myself included, we don't work full time, certainly not as artists, almost any of us. And even I would say in general, like I wouldn't say that there's a 40-hour week happening for many of us in the typical way, in a way that you would expect. And I know for myself, and I know for some of the moms I've talked to, that's because of this need and desire and ability to be home more with your kids, or to be really deeply involved in the mothering side of things. But I'm curious, like if you could be doing art full time, this is kind of a weird question for you as grandmother, but maybe Janita, if we could like wave a magic wand and be like, you can be a printmaker full time, but you have to go work at it, you have to do that job full time, would you want that right now?
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't want it. I think I have a great balance right now. And it is, yeah, I work out of the house 3 days a week.
Right.
And it feels, I mean, it's a little less, my work has changed a bit in the last couple of years, but it still is feeling fulfilling, but I am very happy to be able to be home on the other days.
I relate to that. And I kind of think about that too when you think about artists who do have a full-time living making their art. And I often wonder if the difference is that they're just doing it 20 more hours a week than I am, 30 more hours a week than I am. They're doing that thing in that really dedicated way, in a way that I'm with you, I'm not actually interested or willing to do that at this point. There were times I thought I was. I'm not anymore. I'm with you on that. But yeah, I wonder do you ever think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. That would be, I'd have to sort of, I'd have to rewrite the history. So
Yeah.
Can't answer it.
Yeah. Well, and Trish, maybe you have input because you have been maybe not a full-time artist, but absolutely full-time in careers.
Sure.
When
Full-time plus in careers. but I don't think I could have, I mean, people asked, well, how can you do mothering and be full-time in a career? Well, to me, I couldn't have done the full-time career without the mothering. Because the mothering was what renewed me and enriched me and returned me to that deepest parts of myself. My family life is what drove all that. I had the energy and capacity for creativity in the work I did, because I would go home to a very nurturant family life. So to me, I don't separate those things. I can't separate them. And I was never trying to make enough time to do this or that. I understand that. I read it all the time in the way, do you have enough time to be creative if you're a parent and so on? And I know it's different for everybody. But for me, it fueled my creativity. And I wouldn't change a thing about it, right? As hard as it was, no, it wasn't hard, come on. As complex as it was, or as time-consuming as it all was, wouldn't have changed a thing.
Right.
Well, and I think it is about framing how you think about yourself. Like if you're thinking I'm an artist, and what you think that means. Does that mean you have 6 hours alone in a studio to think about stuff? And I used to think that, because being in art school, that's what you're given, and it's the story you're told. And we when we were in 4th year, we got our own studio, and that was a big deal, and you move into it and you put all your stuff out, and you're thinking a lot, and you think you have to ease into it, and you need time, and the creativity is going to come slowly, and there's a story about what an artist is and how they work. And I think I felt that for a long time as a mother. Like, well, there's no time. I can't even, there's half an hour. There's no way I'm going to go do something. Yep. I need to let the creativity come. And it did that. So framing it is the change. And I think that as you were talking about mothering giving you the energy to continue doing the thing, I was thinking about that. I was thinking like it comes in very little moments, and in a big burst, and usually with the kids. And I would say part of my practice is just helping the kids make their stuff. And that doesn't take long, slow thinking and a quiet room. It takes responding to an idea, and that would be, I would say, the other part of art school that that was coming. It's that thinking laterally, what can we do with this? How am I going to build that Halloween costume? Just the energy of everything happening all the time is what moves that creativity forward.
Absolutely.
And so, that developed slowly over time as I was settling into being a mother, which takes time.
It's so interesting you would talk about long sort of thinking or bursts and so on. And I was thinking, before I had kids, of course, if I had to write a paper at school or whatever, I would need a length of time, and then maybe there was a cup of coffee that had to go with that, and then and I would do something else, and finally get down to the writing of it. Once I had kids, and I went back to school and did graduate work then, I learned to think in bursts. Okay, we've got this 10-minute window here. They're doing their homework at the kitchen table, and I'm starting to write this paper. I wrote an entire thesis in 1-hour segments or 45-minute segments, because that's all the time I had to do it. But the thrill of that is actually quite profound. And it is that development of lateral thinking and of the ability to take a burst of energy and use it. I think the amount of time I wasted my energy when I was originally in school, like I thought I was busy, and I wasn't.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yes, I very
so
distinctly
now,
had that thought.
and this is the part of mothering and family life that in fact explodes the internal capacities to do all these things simultaneously. And sometimes not well, often with frustration, etc. All those things are true. But for me personally, it just opened all the doors.
Okay. And did it give you a different relationship to how good things have to be for you to be willing to put them out the door? Like you just said, sometimes not well. And I know for myself, sometimes I'm very much a good is done. Like good enough, it's done. The time came, the deadline is here. I'm okay with that. I'm not a perfectionist. I will just get it out the door and keep on moving. Did you used to be more uptight about the result, and has it changed, or am I projecting my thing onto you?
Well, it's funny, all the things that we remember and don't remember, but I do remember at least feeling if they've got their clothes on correctly and they're relatively clean, yeah, bonus, let's go.
Yeah.
I didn't actually worry as much about that as I thought I might have. I didn't have time, frankly,
Right.
to worry about it too much. And good enough was good enough.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I think I still sort of struggle with when to be done with something, and it's less. Definitely less. And it is definitely a result of no time that I've had to. So I used to start plates over when I was in school.
Okay.
I would start an etching and it wouldn't be what I wanted, and I would start again to get it right. And I feel like I rarely do that now.
Okay.
I'm gonna power through with what started. And in fact, that is learned from watching other printmakers in their studios and realizing, oh yeah, right, you can work with something and not need to get it perfectly right off the bat. So yeah, no, but I was not easy on myself for a long time. My mom has a story. She was like, oh, when you were 5, you would just crumple up all your drawings and throw them away if they weren't exactly right. And I have a kid who is the opposite of that. She'll be like, yeah, I started making a boat and it looks like a banana, but that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow.
I'm sort of like that.
I would be crumpled. So, yeah.
All the different ways we can make art, right?
Yeah,
All the different ways.
And the ways our kids
so you
teach
learn,
us how to.
exactly.
Yeah.
You do learn slowly and painfully.
You do.
Yeah.
Well, I can't believe it, but we are almost at our time, and I just wanted to finish off by asking you both, I'm going to say a year, but whatever, the time frame doesn't matter. Over the next year or something, what do you envision for your creative next steps? Do you have projects or like a picture in your mind, a broad strokes of what the next year might hold for you creatively?
Jump in.
Go ahead.
I'm as I said, I'm recording the stories that I've written over the last 4 years with my son, and he's doing the intros and the extras, and he's doing things like, Soma, where did this idea come from, and what were you thinking when you were writing this? So this is going to be a very interesting project for us, and for the family, and we're going to invite family members in that I've written about, and have them, and my son Bryn is going to say, so Dad, Ma wrote this story about you. So what do you think? Is that what happened? Right?
Oh, that's fun.
So we're going to have a very interesting dialogue about all of this. And I think what will come from it is a kind of focus. I see now that I have a bit of a body of work, so to speak, in that sense, so arrogant, and I don't mean it at all like that. I just have a bunch of stories I've written. But I see a pattern to them. And I kind of see where it could go. So the next year will also be about, do I put a group of these together and put them out in the world in some way? And that's something I've debated with myself. But I will give that thought. So a year from now, I would hope that that's kind of resolved, that I've either said, yeah, not for me, or I'm going to go, yeah, I'm going to do that.
All right.
I will say, I have 2 things I want to say. One is that I think I want to keep working with the people I work with. And many of you are in this room. And
She's
so,
like putting out contracts.
but what I mean by that is, like, I really feel that this way that I can talk about my work is directly a result from those relationships and people like you who pull me out and say, hey, let's do this thing, and let's make costumes for this show, and let's brainstorm about, you know, all of that is what has also brought me to this space. And so I guess in a year I'd like to still be doing those things. Those relationships, they're going to continue.
Yeah.
And secondly, like much more specifically, art making is, I have a press from one of the artists that I worked with for many years, and it's been sitting in the barn. And so what I'd really love to have in a year is a little studio set up. And in fact, this summer, at our farm, we run a little camp for kids. And one of my goals is to have something set up so that we can do printmaking workshops with the kids. And that can be lino, but I do think it would be very cool. It's fun to print on a press because you can do different things. And so I would like to be, that was a long dream even when I was in undergrad. I'm gonna set up a community print shop. And that is maybe not in a year, but that's where I'm sort of heading.
Amazing. Well, thank you both. Thank you so much for this conversation. It has been as delightful as I expected it to be. And as I have with all the other conversations, I learned some things. I learned not to assume my reasons or my concepts about things are anybody else's. You guys have completely different reasons behind what you're doing or ways you came to what you're doing. And just because we share art and motherhood in common doesn't mean I actually know until I ask you. So that's what I've been loving about these conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.